We're going to get started here. Does anyone not have one of the handouts? Dr. Szyld will bring you a handout. This is to use it you don't need to use it right now. We'll tell you when you're going to use it. So while everyone's getting settled, good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Andy Mittelman from Boston Medical Center, and today I'm joined by many talented colleagues from across the country, so thank you very much to each of our faculty experts for being here. Neither myself nor any of my co-presenters have anything to disclose. Today we're going to talk about money. Well, I guess sort of. As the old adage goes, time is money. We're going to use finance as a metaphor for exploring how we treat our time. And everyone likes to say that physicians aren't great at managing money, but are we really any better at managing our time? Happy birthday to her, by the way. Has anyone here ever felt overstretched? A lot of hands here. What does it feel like to be completely maxed out? So in finance, our analogy, that would be like living paycheck to paycheck. And in academic medicine, that's like living hour to hour, struggling to meet deadlines, obligations, commitments, all while balancing a crazy schedule, time zone switching, heavily demanding physical job. And remember, our field is 24/7, right? So we're gonna get that 9 p.m. phone call that just reshapes your entire week. I think it's worth acknowledging that this is something we all feel at times. This is seemingly normal in our field. Because many of us experience this delusion that we can do more with the same amount of time. When in fact, I would argue that this is a zero-sum game. You can borrow from one aspect of your life and reallocate to another, but you can't just create more. And at times you're going to need to do just that, reallocate. Maybe you have a big conference presentation coming up or a manuscript that's due, so you skip a committee meeting, or maybe you kick a research project down the line a month. But fundamentally, you can't go over budget into perpetuity because that leaves you in debt, continuing with our analogy. And we all know that debt only gets harder to get out of the longer it accrues. So say, for example, you're so overstretched that you can't deliver on a project. Maybe you've already invested a substantial amount of time, but you have to forfeit your stake. Anyone who's ever worked on a paper but walked away without getting authorship knows what that feels like. We'll call this endpoint academic bankruptcy. And it has major implications on your wellness, your lifestyle, your professional satisfaction. But it also affects your academic credit rating, if you will. So if you can't execute, you become an unreliable partner, and then you just miss out even more. So what's the goal here today? Don't go bankrupt, perhaps. Or more realistically, we want you to live within your time budget, whatever that is for you individually. It could be 5 hours or 75 hours. The key here is that we want it to be deliberate. So with that, we're going to pause for a minute, and we want to hear from you all, y'all. How do y'all spend your time in an average week or month? What are the tasks that you do that comprise your job as an academic physician?
Or as a resident.
Or as a resident, yeah, physician. They're still physicians. Program director.
Trainees.
Violent agreement.
Yes.
Emails.
Emails, great. So emails cover many categories. What specific type of emails?
That's my point. The emails is everything. Everything is email.
Okay, we'll put that in every category. Everyone can write down emails. We're going to try and sort it into tasks.
You're not checking too much email for political care, but...
Just shout it out, guys.
Writing notes.
Writing notes, great. You're going to do that on shift. Dr. Sheng. You may do it after shift. We'll call that post-shift charting. Feedback and evaluation, we'll call that service. Scheduling, so that's, yeah, service.
That's Chief Resident Humble Brag.
Yeah. Writing manuscripts, great.
Writing lectures or didactics.
Didactics, you can put that in the same category. Yeah, and there too. A lot of these things overlap categories.
Surveys.
Surveys, great. So what about the things that we have to do every year? Like, for example, every year I have to meet with Dr. Arbelaez. I have to review my own CV, those kind of things I develop as a person. Yeah, right, so we'll call it CV maintenance, CME. Grant writing. We'll put that under scholarship research. Committee meetings, service. Lots of different types of committee meetings. Actually working our shifts. So in the interest of time, we're going to move on here, but hopefully you get the point that we do a lot of different things. We identify as ER doctors, but actually a lot of our job is not necessarily in the emergency department. Now that we've heard a little bit about the things that you guys are doing with your time, I want to introduce you to the 4 domains of time investment. And I'm going to propose that everything that we do as academic emergency physicians can be put in one of these silos. Just as your own financial budget should be thought out, 20% for housing, 10% for food, whatever. That these domains also should reflect your priorities because they're going to lead to both opportunities and responsibilities. Keeping that in mind, we're going to shift to the first of 2 exercises. So go ahead and grab your handout, and we're going to work on the first page here. The first exercise is an individual exercise. And over the next 10 minutes, we want you to account for how you spend your time right now. This is on a weekly basis. So if you work 20 hours of clinical shifts every week, that's easy. It's 20 hours. If you have a bi-weekly 4-hour research meeting, that's 2 hours per week. So we'll take 10 minutes and do this first exercise. During this time, our faculty members are going to be walking around, checking in. Any questions, please feel free to speak up.
Take about 1 more minute, and then we'll get together as a group to discuss. Okay, so thank you, Andy, for getting us here, and everyone for trying out, taking a reflective look at your own allocation and how you're burning up your time. I'd like to really come around the room and get some insights, not for you to read down the line on what you're spending your time on, but what was difficult about the exercise? What did it reveal to you? What are you thinking right now? Pretty open-ended. Love to hear from at least 4 or 5 people here. Volunteer or volunteer your friend.
It's really helpful to write down and identify where the kind of hidden costs of time that bleed into your regular life that you don't consider as part of your time budget, really.
So being able to make explicit some of the things that are just assumed to be there, but you're not really counting. Thank you. I think I saw a couple over here.
I'm struggling to estimate weekly allocation because some of these things are more cyclical for me and not on a weekly basis. And so if I don't specifically budget time for the 3rd week in the month to do writing, and then that week is crazy, then guess what doesn't get done? The writing. So that's what I'm struggling with.
So are you saying there's some things that maybe are 2 days a month, how do I make that into a weekly thing? I think you have a choice to work on a weekly basis, some departments work on an annual basis. I would probably just take 2 days, 16 hours, divided by the 4 weeks and count it as 4 hours. As you're trying, if the weekly units work for you. Definitely agree on the cyclical things because you have to kind of get ahead of some things, then have time for interview season or annual reviews or whatever the kind of big hairy goals are. Planning a conference, lots of different things that are maybe set aside that you don't think about it. A couple more. And we do have more handouts for folks who are just coming in. Jordan.
Hashtag PD life, but there are many, many mornings where I come in with a design on what I'm going to do as I walk into the office, And then somebody knocks on the door, did you hear? And then the next thing I know, I've lost 6 hours addressing whatever fire needs to be put out, and finding the way to sort of continue follow through on what I hope to do first thing in the morning when those sort of things arise is where I struggle a lot.
Yeah, so fire is a good metaphor. My sister-in-law who's in business is telling me about the tornadoes that rolled into her office, and my other colleague said, well, maybe it's just a wind and you can close the door, and how do you decide on that? And how do we build some, don't know or schedule ourselves so that we have that bandwidth? It's part of this. Anybody else want to share any insights or challenges looking at this? Love to get a resident or two who's kind of thinking a few years ahead now on what this means.
I was just going to say I should have stayed an APD instead of a program director. That's what my timesheet has made me realize now. So first year, I was like, oh wait, 30, 40, no, I think it's 50. Maybe it's 50 hours a week. I don't know. Like I've given up.
Yeah, I think the problems of time budget accentuate as you move in your career, so that's part of the bad news. Also, I think the more non-clinical time, the more important this is because there's so much discretion and flexibility. Seeming flexibility, like, oh, I don't have to attend to that, I'll take care of this other thing, for sure. Any residents willing to share with us what this means to you?
I've noticed that when I have lighter rotations or a few weeks where I have a lot of free time, I tend to say yes to projects and get excited for ideas and commit to things. And then when all of those things end up needing me to participate, I'm then in a really heavy IC rotation or I have no free time, and then I'm kicking myself for having overcommitted when I felt like I had a lot of time.
You're spending during your using that credit card during the light rotations and then paying the bill during the harder months. Yeah, and that keeps on happening to us. I think I'll head back to you to take us to the second part.
Okay, so we're going to transition to the second exercise here. And using your 2-page handout, you can fold the first page over like this. And the goal for the second exercise is to craft your future time budget, where you want to be 1 year, 2 years from now, based on some of the reactions that you had to the first exercise. So you're going to see the third column is your future hours per week. This is where you want to be. And the notes column is how you're going to get there. For this exercise, we're going to ask that you work in pairs and talk through your thought process with your partner. Critique, help them come up with ways that they can get to their goal. This is 20 minutes for this part.
Okay, so we're going to get to our group level conversation here. I hate to interrupt you when you're doing such a nice job working with each other. First, I'd like to just ask you any initial reactions from going from current to future design. I hope that you found this empowering and creative process and not overwhelming and dictating. So, love to get a couple initial reactions. Dan, you can help me with mine. Thank you. No right answers here.
We didn't talk about this, but I think for me, part of it is trying to find more people to help with the work I'm doing now. And that requires money from the department or from the school, which is a big hurdle. But I think that is the thing that will help me budget my time better.
What a great insight, right? Like if something takes 40 hours, you could do 2 of them and 38 other people could do 1 hour. Yeah.
Something we did talk about was trying to overlap some of this stuff. So some of the stuff that we do for service and turn that into some scholarship and research for us to make it a little bit easier to cut down time in one area and kind of double benefit, which everyone talks about, obviously, but yeah.
Allocation, awesome. I'm just curious, have you heard of the 6-hour work week? Yeah. So anybody have 6 hours as their total, the bottom total for either one? No? Anybody have more than 70 hours for your totals? Raise your hand. Some weeks maybe. Anybody in the 50 to 60 or 50 to 70? Yeah. Anybody in the 40 to 50? 30, 20, 10? Okay, so Anybody see a change when they move from the current to the future? Did anybody go up? Anybody wishing to work more? No? Anybody staying the same? Okay. Anybody wishing less? Okay, good. So that's lots of interest in self-care, the long game that Andy's talking about. Like we need to pace ourselves. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And making sure we're taking it. What the denominator here? Maybe it is around 50 to 60 hours, and not all weeks can look the same, but then we have to allocate our budgets.
Damian, I'll just share. Maybe you guys had a similar experience to what I did. This was an exercise that we did together a year ago. And as a new faculty member, I felt, my contract is for 28 hours. This is great, right? I'm only working 28 hours a week. It's awesome to be in attending. And then I couldn't figure out what I was doing with the rest of my time. Why am I always working? So I came out at about 80 and realized that that's probably why I'm not happy. It's because my expectations are not matching the reality.
So Andy, what were some of the things that were like overextended that you shrunk down, or how did you change things around?
One granular thing right at the top of your sheet, it talks about on shift, and then charting is a separate category. So I was doing a huge amount of my charting, we'll say an hour for every 8-hour shift afterwards, and moving that in. So if you work 4 shifts a week, that's 4 additional hours. It's a lot. Those hours add up really quickly. Moving your charting time is an easy one that we all do, right? So a lot of this stuff is individualized, but I presume everyone in this room writes notes. If you can move that on shift as much as possible, that will save you time. How about, Damian also taught me about learner evaluations and doing those on shift as well, in real time. You can discuss it with the learner while you're writing it.
Love to get some insights from you in terms of how you took your current allocation and started to imagine. I'm especially interested when you had a sense of, okay, I'd like to spend more time doing this or that. Maybe you had a career conversation where they said, you really should be thinking about presenting nationally. What's your strategy now? What insights did you get from yourself or your partner towards redesigning your budget for next year, next 2 years? I think some of you made some strides.
I think the idea of delegation came up. So what is it that you really need to do, and what is it that you can have somebody else do? And then, of course, you need that other person to do it, to be there to do it.
Money is one way to get people to do that, but it tends to be kind of transactional and can only go so far. So tapping into people's motivation, self-interest, making sure they see that multi-value. I think a lot of times around that topic, I sometimes join a team as a contributor to learn about the topic. Like Laura and I were talking about the education committee. So like you might join the education committee here because you want to network there, or because you want to be amongst them or learn what people are thinking about, but not necessarily for the work alone. So there's more value than just the time spent. Other insights or reactions to going through the process?
So I was just really impressed with the power of talking it through another person, or maybe Ryan's just a genius. But just the idea of expressing out loud, the challenges that you have, and with another person. I mean, I do this in my head all the time and don't come up with anything. But having the ability to discuss it through with somebody and have them just kind of bounce it back, I think really was powerful.
Yeah, struggling together, having a thought partner, getting to those natural points where you can reevaluate. One of the things we kind of taken it to the week level, and we recognize that it'll change week to week, but it also can change year to year. So, like for example, I'm looking now ahead towards a year that's going to have a lot more personal and professional development than say my past 2 years, which was a lot on the service. And so you don't have to pick a budget and keep it forever. It's just in this phase, what's going to help you fulfilling trajectory opportunities. From the rest of the esteemed panel, any react? You've been walking around thinking about this and helping. What insights do you have?
I would say talking to the group, there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of service work, especially a lot of mentoring, a lot of group things. And the thing that I've learned is not well, and Ryan, if you're gonna laugh, there for some constipation, is pairing this and grouping this together of doing things in group. I'd rather spending like 3 hours every week mentoring residents on CV and job preparation of making that 1 4-hour workshop where everyone comes, we teach each other, and that saves me a lot of time on the back end. A lot of people over here about their mentorship. Can you do group mentorship, have teams, and save yourself the time? People learn together and be more effective in the mentorship.
And I think embedded in that is also aligning it to your responsibilities. So as an associate program director, helping those residents really core function. Some of us sometimes do some things that are interesting to us, but maybe not like the most, which I think is really important to continue. Like, I think we should be doing the things that cause us joy, even though they don't fit exactly into our career path. Just don't do 80 hours of it, because then you're taking away from your other buckets, which really are going to need to be aligned to your responsibilities, your key outcomes.
So something that grew out of necessity for me, I was telling this group, maybe helpful for others, is finding that recognition and insight of when you're no longer being efficient. When you're trying to do deep work, it's really important. So so I had a baby last year, and before that, I would, a lot of flexibility, a lot of time to do work whenever I want. My wife will be, watching TV, and at whatever point, if she's watching a reality show, I'm like, those two are still together? That's time where you're like no longer being efficient. So, now that, I have much less time to do the deep work, really focusing on that and realize that when your efficiency drops off, go and switch off to do something else. Like all the stuff that you have to get done anyway, maybe pay your bills, go take your car to get inspected, come back when you're feeling a little more refreshed and be able to put in that deep work again. It'll help you be more efficient and help you do a little more with that little bit of amount of time that you have.
So, I think this is a really great exercise to do on a regular basis. Obviously, we can't do it all the time. There's some really great things that have come out as people sort of are mindful about their time, that some of which I started doing to some effect, right? Just like somebody said, and then someone knocks on your door and your next 6 hours are gone, and that wasn't the plan. But, look at your calendar, right? And somebody told me this quite a while back when he was on the ventures. Your calendar tells you what your priorities are, whether they are intended or not. And so if you look at your calendar for a month or 2 months and you're like, wow, that's not the way I wanted to spend my time, or the way I'm going to spend my time, then it's a really good time to recalibrate. And I now, after asking for 10 years for help, I have someone that's helping me manage my calendar. So now I've had to be really intentional about blocking off time. Otherwise, my entire day is full of meetings, and I can't do any project work, deep work, mentoring, et cetera. So everything is really scheduled. And my joke is that the only things happening in my life are the things right in front of me or on my Outlook calendar, and it's not there, it's not happening. But it does really help, and it helps you to be able to and stuff. So block out your project time or whatever is important to you or important to your career, both personally and professionally, and that's going to help a lot.
Any insights on delegating? I think like a transformative frame for me has been something that you think might be a burden for you is actually an opportunity for somebody else. But anybody that has experience kind of helping other people take on something that you were doing before and that they can live on that way, that could speak to how you did that, how you might do it. Avery? Christian? Yeah.
I can say that I'm doing it successfully, but somebody told me to reevaluate all the meetings that I'm personally going to, and is there someone else who would benefit, like you said, from the learning of being part of that group and exploring it, and it's someone that I might touch base with about other things already anyway, and then get kind of the notes or debrief from that meeting, in addition to, again, pairing it with mentorship or kind of check-ins that we do anyway. But I have a lot of guilt around that because there are meetings that I would normally be there myself for, but that's one strategy that I'm trying to do.
Yeah, a lot of this is self-imposed, isn't it?
Yeah.
I honestly found the surest way to get someone to help me is to tell them how much stuff I'm doing, and just to share with them, like, gosh, I really feel like I'm overwhelmed with all this stuff, and we have all these tasks to do. And I have always found that, at least maybe the people I work with, are like, oh, well, I could do that. Like, that's something very easy for me to do. Like, there's things that I would consider a burden to someone that they're just like, I can do that easily. Like, I've done it before. Or in my prior life, I used to whatever, it's fine. Or I could take that committee for you because then I could get into the medical school stuff and have that. So sometimes just expressing, like, that you have too much on your plate and then listing the things you have, someone actually may volunteer. I mean, maybe not always, but, you know, it's an option because then it gets someone to kind of grab on and say, okay, I could probably do that, so.
And I would just throw out there, I think in the last couple of years, we've gotten into a very meeting-centric culture, and it's very easy just to throw Zoom meetings out there, and like something that I'm working on, but the concept was liberating, is to think about, like, do we really need a meeting for this? Like, a 30-minute or 60-minute meeting can sometimes be a 5-minute phone call, and it just clears things up very simply. And like, sometimes just a quick call on the phone clears up like 10 emails back and forth, or a meeting where you recap everything you did last time and nothing gets done. So just thinking about, like, meetings are not necessarily always all they're cracked up to be.
Couldn't agree more, and I frequently find myself calling somebody thinking, I'm sort of so old school and call you without texting in advance, but I have a question. And just remembering to do that. And then another idea, building on that, is to have a higher standard for what meetings are for. You know, and to say this is a decision-making meeting, or this is a let's work through this, and like at the end of this meeting, have the draft of the PowerPoint that then can be refined on Box or whatever your favorite thing to be. So I think just like our responsibilities might be self-imposed in the way we work, I think we're the designers of our future, and that's what a lot of this is about. I'm thinking we're about to wrap up, and we asked Christian to have some closing comments for us, and I think we can move to that. Andy, how do you think?
I know we're out of time on the time budget workshop, but no, I wanted to just say a couple of things. I think I wish I'd had this as a junior faculty. So I look back at my time, and so when you don't do this and you work 100 hours, I nearly died. I ended up in the hospital in the ICU with pneumonia, and that was a sort of a pivotal moment. So don't do that. That's kind of the worst outcome of not taking care of your time. From a mid-career standpoint, I think it's really all about email and calendar, as you just kind of heard. It's really about controlling the calendar and living around it. I think that the more that you can do that, the better. Dedicate hours, block out hours, like Tuesdays for writing or Friday mornings for, that sort of like deep thinking time. Schedule personal time with your family, with your loved ones, like particularly like schedule events that you can look forward to, trips, dinners, like be deliberate and intentional about it. You'll be surprised. I mean, that probably sounds foolish to say, and you're like, geez, what do you have to do that for? It's really important. You maximize the dead time. Use all of the dead time that we have, all of the commuting time, all of the, I'll even admit to you right now, I get on the Peloton, and because that's my self-care to exercise, I put my laptop there, and at least I can like sweat and do some work, and I use some of that dead time. Walk my dog, I'm listening to a podcast or something like that. So just maximize the use of your time to meet your needs. Lastly, as a chair, I'll say that for me, it comes back to autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That's what I want my faculty and fellows and residents to have. And autonomy is about how you can control your time to use it to your fullest potential. Have mastery of what you want to have mastery around. And purpose is that passion. And so like, that's the ultimate goal. We want faculty, fellows, and residents to be well. Professional and personal wellness is really important. But it all comes back to the why, like why do you do things? Create your own mission statement, have your own value statement, vision, and follow those dreams. Then there's a really nice, I'm gonna end with this, there's a really nice visual around time management talks where your life or your day is this jar, all right? You're gonna fill it with the big rocks, the things that are really important. And those need to be prioritized, number one. And then you fill it with the smaller rocks, and then you fill it with all the little pebbles. We tend to always fill it with all the pebbles first. Those are like the easy, distracting things. Prioritize, understand what your values are, understand what your mission vision is, your why. Those are your big rocks. Fill your jar with the big rocks. Thank you.
And that's an appreciation of the closing words, but also for all of you for spending your time with us. Thank you for coming to our workshop. We love your feedback, and you'll have the last word here, but I'm grateful for everyone collaborated here.
Another huge thank you to our faculty. Thank you. And here's our email addresses. Please feel free to send us any thoughts, feedback, suggestions. This is something we want to continue to evolve over time. If you're interested in partnering with us, let us know. So, thanks for coming, everyone.
The app is coming out, and we can help you guys do this.